Hello, this video is for anybody who missed the notes about the cardiovascular system or anyone who just wants a refresher before the quiz. So let's get started. Cardio. Oh, and by the way, you should be using your note-taking guide and filling this in as we go. You can find that on RomanNet under the topics section, or if it's also on Shobi. So, cardiovascular system. Cardio comes from the Greek word for heart, and vascular in Latin means blood vessel. So they put the two together, and the definition here is that it's all organs and tissues that transport materials to all parts of your body. What those four main parts are, of course, the heart, most important part of your cardiovascular system, arteries, veins, and capillaries. Those three things combined are what we would also sometimes call blood vessels. Just a general term for those three. Anything that contains blood. Anything that contains blood in a small container, like a vessel, like a tube, would be an artery, vein, or a capillary. Now, the main purpose of your blood vessels is to transport, mostly transporting oxygen and other things. And your arteries carry blood away. And I've told everybody the way to remember that, they both start with the letter A, arteries, away. And they transport things away from the heart. Usually, it's good things. It's supposed to be delivering good things, but of course, if something bad gets in, it will be delivered as well. The things that it delivers most is oxygen to all the parts of the body, most important element being delivered. It delivers glucose to your cells. They need energy. It delivers hormones when the hypothalamus is regulating things and your body is going through changes. It delivers amino acids, which we use to make protein, minerals, vitamins, etc. These are just a few things that your arteries and your blood deliver to the body. Veins are the opposite. Arteries are carrying it away. Veins are going towards the heart. And they're usually delivering waste products from the body to other places where we get rid of the waste. For example, delivering carbon dioxide to the lungs so that you can exhale the carbon dioxide out, delivering urea, which is the main ingredient of urine, delivering that to the kidneys so the kidneys can process it and turn it into urine, and then your bladder can get rid of it. Capillaries, that is where a vein and an artery meet. And that's this connection between the two where there's exchanging going on, usually dropping off oxygen, delivering oxygen and then picking up carbon dioxide so that it can get rid of it. And here's a good picture. These tiny arteries, the smaller they get, the further away they get from the heart, the smaller they get, and they start to get really small as they go into these, they're called capillary beds. Imagine just like a red blood cell having to fit through this. It would be going single file by the time it gets to the smallest part. Another name for the smallest part of an artery here would be arteriole. And when it starts to become a vein, it's getting to this blue section, it's picking up carbon dioxide. Over here we would call it a venule, which is a small vein. And then it becomes a regular size vein and it starts going back the other direction. One thing you should know, a myth, is that your blood is never blue. I know people say that if there's no oxygen in it, it's blue, but that's just an urban legend, an old wives' tale. Your blood is always red. What you're seeing in your hand, if you're looking at your veins, is just the vein itself. The vein itself has kind of a bluish hint to it, and the blood underneath is always red. But in all these diagrams, you will see that the blue blood will be representing blood that doesn't have as much oxygen in it. The red blood will be representing blood that has a lot of oxygen in it. That's so we can just keep them straight and as we're looking at them, be able to tell at a glance if it's a vein or an artery. So let's look at the flow of blood through the body. You see here this animation showing you that that's constantly flowing through. And again, the blue represents blood that is oxygen poor. It just came from the body and it's going to the heart. and it goes from the heart to the lungs, and then the lungs will remove the carbon dioxide. Does not have much oxygen, if any. The red blood represents blood that is oxygen rich. It just came from the lungs, full supply of oxygen, goes to the heart, and then is pumped to the rest of the body to deliver the oxygen everywhere. You'll see there are two types of circulation happening. There's this one circuit here called the pulmonary circuit. This circle from heart to lungs, back to heart again, is called the pulmonary circuit. Pulmonary comes from the Latin word pulmonus for lungs. Anytime you see pulmonary in these diagrams, you just automatically say to yourself, oh, that must mean it's going to or coming from the lungs. Then there's this other circle here, this systemic circulation. Systemic means the rest of the system, the whole body. So it's going from the heart down to all the other systemic arteries. They're being delivered everywhere. And of course, this is just a simplified drawing. It is much more complex than this, more like it branches off of a big tree. And then it gets to the capillaries, where it drops off the oxygen, picks up some carbon dioxide, brings it back to the heart. This circuit is the systemic circuit. And it's kind of like a figure eight, a little bit more of a loopy figure eight. You see, if you follow these animations, it's going around like that. So, pulmonary circuit, systemic circuit. Now, let's look at the heart itself. Blood always flows into the heart through what's called an atrium. An atrium comes from Latin for front room. Just think of it like a lobby or a vestibule in a building. It's the front room, the first room you get to when you come into the building. Well, same thing with the heart. This is an atrium. This is another atrium. The first place it comes to. When it comes in to the right atrium, which is your left, just have to imagine it's the right side of the body, not the right side that you're looking at. So when it comes into the right atrium, it's coming in through these two veins that are called vena cava. Vena cava is Latin for hollow vein. You can kind of see that vein, cava means hollow, like a cave. But there's two of them. There's one coming from above and then one coming from beneath, but they meet together into this right atrium. And the superior vena cava, superior means above, it's coming from like the brain, the neck, the face, anything above the heart. Inferior vena cava coming down from below, lower body to the heart. So this blood is coming in, and notice that the diagram shows that it's blue. That means it is oxygen poor, and another word for that is deoxygenated. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Deoxygenated. It's removed the oxygen. It's not much oxygen. It just finished delivering oxygen to the body, so it's coming back with a load of carbon dioxide. Now it goes into the left atrium here. Not your left, the body's left. The left atrium, and it's coming from the pulmonary veins. There's two here from the left lung, and two here from the right lung. They meet together behind the heart. They're both coming in, so they're bringing in blood that is oxygen rich. It's going to be what we call oxygenated, the opposite of deoxygenated. Just came in from the lungs. This one just came in from the rest of the body after going to deliver. Now, when each atria contracts, each atria, I should say the atria, plural for atrium, the blood drains down below into something called a ventricle. Ventricle is comes from the Latin word for belly. So you think of it like it's filling up its belly, going from the upper to lower. When the ventricles contract, those are the strongest muscles. If you remember from the heart dissection, the strongest muscles, and they are squeezing it up out of the heart. From this right ventricle here, it goes through to the pulmonary arteries. What does pulmonary mean again? It means to the lungs. So these are going to the lungs because remember the arrows are blue, the veins are blue. They're showing that these are oxygen poor. They need to go get rid of the carbon dioxide. From the left ventricle, this blood is squeezed up into this artery called the aorta. This is your main artery. This is the biggest artery in your body, and it then connects all these little branches and way more branches that we can't see. That goes to all of the systemic arteries, all the arteries going to the rest of the body. Now, you'll notice these doorways here. All these doorways inside of the heart, they separate the four chambers, the two atriums, the two ventricles, and the pulmonary artery and the aorta. They're called valves, and the valve is like a one-way door. Think of it like a turnstile as you're leaving the L, getting off the train. Only one way through. You can't go backwards. Now, I'll show you. There's only these four valves. I'll show you them in order. The first one, the tricuspid valve, is right here. And the tricuspid valve is where the blood from the right atrium passes through to get to the ventricle, right ventricle. And here's the tricuspid. When you see a tricuspid during a dissection, you can see that it has three flaps that come together. They look like three petals on a flower, and that's where the name tricuspid came from. Pulmonic valve is right here. The pulmonic valve goes from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. And that should be easy to remember. Pulmonic, pulmonary. Sometimes pulmonic valve is also called the pulmonary valve, but they're both acceptable uses. Then, on the other side, when the blood comes back from the lungs and it goes into the left atrium, this valve, this doorway to the next chamber, is called the mitral valve. You can see it filling up that ventricle. And then the aortic valve, and it flows up, squeezed up into the aorta. Easy to remember name, aortic valve goes to aorta. Now, here's a nice little joke just to break the mood here. I hope you're all laughing. So let's now talk about some problems that can happen with our cardiovascular system. It's very, very important. The whole body depends on the heart, arteries, veins, capillaries, all doing their jobs. And when things get in the way, then we can have major, major problems. One of them is atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is just a buildup of cholesterol, this waxy looking substance, this gross looking stuff here that starts to build up on the inside of the veins and arteries. And that's called plaque, atherosclerotic plaque. And cholesterol is normal. We already have cholesterol in our body, and we have what's called good cholesterol. And then there's bad cholesterol, and that's found in the unhealthy foods that we eat. And of course, poor diet would lead to more cholesterol. And that cholesterol can build up inside of the arteries, and some of the side effects are a clogged artery. Think of this as like a pipe. If this was a pipe under your kitchen sink and it was getting clogged like this, then every time you're filling up the sink with water, it would take longer and longer to drain. That can lead to a pretty serious side effect, a heart attack. So what's a heart attack? Next one, a heart attack, is when the heart muscle cells die. And that's usually because it's gotten less oxygen, it's getting less blood flow from maybe from a clogged artery from cholesterol, atherosclerosis. But it could also, heart attacks can happen for many reasons. There could be some other condition that's causing the heart muscle cells to die, and if that happens too much, then your heart cannot be able to properly function. It cannot beat, and we can have what's called heart failure, which of course it doesn't sound good. Cardiac arrest, heart failure means that your heart stops beating, and that would usually mean death unless a doctor can restart your heart quick enough. Third problem is high blood pressure. also known as hypertension. Hypertension is when the force against the inside of the blood vessels is way too high. Now, it could be anything. It could be a blocked artery that's causing that, like atherosclerosis. It could also be genetic. There's a lot of reasons that someone might have high blood pressure, and it's usually easy to fix. Sometimes a change in diet, sometimes increased exercise, sometimes medication. But you can see this long list of things that could go wrong if high blood pressure goes untreated. So that's it for our notes about the cardiovascular system. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email or stop by and see me, or you can schedule a time on my Book Me page.